fam, welcome to the Female Athlete Mission. We are a community of female athletes on a mission to talk honestly about faith, life, and being a woman in sports. But we hope that while you're here, you'll find that you're not alone and that you'll be encouraged and inspired. I'm your host, Natalie Lawrence, and today with us, we have Yoli Origel.
Close.
I tried.
Yes. Origel, but yes. I'll answer to Origel, Origel. It's all
Okay,
good.
perfect.
Yes.
I'm really excited to have Yoli on here because we connected through her organization called Cancer Kinship, where they actually, I'm going to have you explain what Cancer Kinship is.
Of course.
But I'm excited to have Yoli here because we're going to talk about her story of cancer survival, but also what she's done since then. And also just kind of speak into like this Cancer Awareness Month in February and Cervical Cancer Awareness in January. There's just a lot of conversations about this. And as a woman, I think there's an opportunity to be super aware of our own bodies and what's going on and the risks and everything. So Yoli's going to talk into that, and I'm really excited. So
thank you for having me.
Yes.
Although I kind of found it a little funny as you're saying, we're talking about female athletes. I'm like, I'm not an athlete.
Well,
but I am active,
Okay,
which
good.
contributes to, overall good well-being and good health. So I'm happy to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, I'm so glad for this to finally happen. We've been
Yes.
talking for a little while. And we are wanting to be a really good example, wearing our masks. We're also at the hospital right now, so it feels right to be wearing our masks too.
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay, so Yoli, why don't you give us your bio? Tell us about what you do. Tell us about Cancer Kinship.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, well, from the cancer side, I am a 13-year cancer survivor. I was diagnosed at the age of 31 with stage 3 breast cancer, lots of cancer activity in my left breast that had spread into my lymph nodes, and I basically battled it head on with chemotherapy first. Had 8 rounds of chemo over 16 weeks, and then I had a bilateral mastectomy. So I got rid of the girls, and then very quickly moved into radiation treatment. I had radiation 5 days a week for 7 weeks straight to combat it coming back. So we were trying to reduce risks of it coming back. And then I waited about 6 months before I reconstructed everything. And the reconstruction process was very lengthy. It took about a year.
Wow.
And they used my lat muscle, my skin to reconstruct my left breast that was radiated and scarred. And then we reconstructed the rest with some leftover tissue that we had spared. So needless to say, I went through a lot of pain, lots of surgeries. And I'm also a breast cancer gene carrier. I have the BRCA1 gene mutation, which means that I am at high risk for gynecologic cancers, specifically ovarian and cervical cancer. And so because of that, I was very proactive in staying on top of the screening, and I'm a huge advocate about educating women about the gynecologic cancer risks. And I had to have a hysterectomy as a preventative measure, so I had that surgery when I turned 40 just 4 years ago, which was, to me, the most difficult decision to make because of the whole motherhood thing. I wanted my babies, and because of that, I couldn't have them afterwards. So needless to say, it's been a heck of a challenge. Just my own cancer survival story is pretty tough and intense. But really, my cancer story started when I was really young because my mom was diagnosed at the age of 35, 36. And she passed away at the age of 42 of metastatic breast cancer. And she left behind 7 kids for my dad to raise on his own. Wow. And then fast forward 8 years into my survival, my sister was diagnosed with metastatic breast cancer, and she passed away, unfortunately. And sprinkled throughout, my oldest sister, cousins, family members, just so much cancer in my life. I honestly don't recall a time when I didn't know the word cancer as a child. So lots and lots of cancer in my life, but also, just a lot of learnings about life. And that's really where my passion comes from, I think, is that having this unique perspective and these 3 cancer stories of my sister and my mom that are a part of mine that really propelled me to move into the cancer space to figure out how to better educate the community and how to advocate on behalf of the cancer community.
Wow. Okay, so
that's the cancer side.
Yes. So then, so your story led into you caring about cancer and talking about that, and then somehow God used that to create Cancer Kinship, and now you're doing amazing things with that.
Yeah, a little bit about my professional background. I've been in the nonprofit sector since I was like 15, 16 years old. I started volunteering and was part of an organization that turned into a Boys and Girls Club. So my heart pumps nonprofit blood. And so I've been in the sector for more than 25 years. And so when my sister passed, and I was kind of thrown into this space of like, lots of dialogue with the Lord about like what happened and why did this happen, and just trying to really examine what I can glean from it, what I can learn from it, and what is my own purpose in life and being here and being spared. Because I could have died very easily and I didn't. And so I really grappled with survivor guilt and really used the power of prayer to navigate survivor guilt and really just tried to explore what to do with my life since I'm still here. Yeah. And so I started hiking my heart out and hiking and praying. Okay. That is my thing. That's still my thing today. A lot of people ask if they can come hiking with me. I'm like, no. That's time for me and the Lord.
Yes.
But
I already have a date, okay?
Yeah, exactly. I will say yes to people, but that time really is designed for me to have this very in-depth conversation with the Lord, and a lot of insights and just a lot of eye-opening experience have occurred during the prayer time that I have during my hikes. And so during my hikes is when I was really asking the question of what to do since I'm still here after going through cancer and after losing my sister. And I really started, what came to mind really was about human connection and how we as cancer survivors, a cancer survivor community, can really step in and help folks that are just starting out, because that is when they're most vulnerable of depression, anxiety, and fear, and just all the things that can really impact your outcome. And so little backtracking a little bit, when I was 2 years into my cancer survival, I started mentoring cancer patients at the request of my physician, my breast surgeon.
Is that something that all offices do?
No.
Okay.
No, in fact, I am so thankful for my doctor for just even wanting to offer that level of support to her patients. And she kept asking me over the years. And so to me, I knew that there was a gap. Right? If I'm still being asked over year to support the cancer patients in that manner, then, there's an obvious gap. So what could I do? And so that really was what I was thinking about during my prayers. Like, okay, what can I do with this human experience? And there are so many more people alive today than ever before that are cancer survivors. People are living longer lives now. Thank God. Yeah. But, how can we engage them? Because a lot of them are left wondering, well, what can I do with this cancer survival? In fact, one of the questions that I get asked the most during my mentorship experience is, how can I do what you're doing? And how can I give back? So hearing those questions and having the dialogue with the Lord, just trying to figure out what to do with my life, it really inspired this whole idea about cancer kinship and how we could really address the emotional impact of cancer through human connections.
Wow, I love that. The emotional impact of cancer through connection, basically. Yeah. Community. Yes, and I love how much that is so biblical too. That we were meant to be in fellowship and to bear each other's burdens. Yes. Yeah, and something I think about a lot too is how God takes our biggest messes and makes them our messages. Yeah. So he takes our pain and he gives them purpose.
Absolutely.
But I never even really thought about the survival guilt aspect of that, and how what I love is how you started to ask God, what can I do? What can I do now? But will you talk about the survival guilt a little bit more? Because I know I'm sure that even goes beyond cancer, but just survivor stories in general. Absolutely. So talk about that a little bit more.
Well, I remember hearing the terms survivor guilt even when I was fighting cancer and learning about cancer survivorship, but I didn't really fully understand it until I was dealing with it personally. Yeah. And I felt it immediately after my sister passed. Okay. When I had a chance to finally settle into the new reality of the loss and grappling with the fact that I was still here and what made me so special and this isn't fair, and my sister had 2 kids that need her and I don't have any. Why didn't you take me? And it was just heart-wrenching and heartbreaking to even be in that space. And very quickly, I could see how I could have spiraled downhill and stayed in this depressive state if I didn't act and do something about it.
Okay.
Like, I was keenly aware of it. And I always talk about there aren't any coincidences, right? God puts people across your path by design. And the folks at St. Joseph's Hospital, which is where my sister was treated, where I was treated here in the city of Orange.
Okay.
They have this amazing hospice team, and they kept reaching out to me even after my sister passed. And I kept getting phone calls and emails, and I got a letter in the mail saying, "We're sorry your sister passed. We really think you should go to grief support." And I'm like, okay, forget it. I don't need to go to grief support. I don't need to sit around a table talking about stuff.
Yeah.
Like, I can't even handle my own grief, much less hear everybody else's grief. And I honestly part of me wanted to stay in this grief state for a moment. And, but I finally, after just thinking it through and praying about it, it's like, okay, they keep calling. I'm just going to go.
Yeah, totally.
Just one time, say I did it, get them off my back, and that's it. And then I went to this meeting, and it was led by a volunteer. Again, no coincidences. The woman that runs this grief support program is also the woman that delivered my sister's ashes to me, because she and her husband, they run the mortuary that handled my sister's passing, my sister. And so she delivered them to me. So I saw her, I recognized her. I immediately just connected with her, human to human, again, heart to heart. And it was because of her that really made me stay there, because I trusted the process because of her. And so anyway, because of that, I was able to talk about what I was feeling, connect with people that were also feeling the same, and try to make sense of it. But it was when I was finally able to articulate out loud in front of this group that I felt guilty, and everybody understood.
Oh my gosh.
They're like, we totally get it.
Yeah.
And so we talked about different ways to navigate through that when we're feeling it. It still hasn't completely gone away.
I'm sure,
It still surfaces. It's still there 4 years later. But nevertheless, I have the tools to be able to navigate through it so that I don't stay in this dark, sad space that I could have easily stayed at and done nothing with my life but other than just stay in my bed and cover my head with the blankets. Like, it's that easy, but it also is that easy to make that choice to do something.
Yeah.
Mindset and prayer, it all feeds into this whole idea of moving forward.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's not necessarily like trying to work yourself out of feeling guilty, because the reality is that your life was spared.
Yeah.
So that's something that we do have to work through, or even like when things are going really good in our life and we're just talking, or our friends are going through really hard things, I think even that can bring up a weird guilt. So it's not necessarily to say, oh, stop feeling guilty, get over it, but it's saying you can sit in that sad point for a long time, or you can ask, okay, then what can I do? Like, how can I move forward? I like how that's what your story points to, is it's more about a moving forward rather than a just get rid of that
and
feeling.
Moving through. There was I don't remember the quote now because I can't retain stuff. I blame it chemo. Chemo stopped me from retaining things. But there's this interesting quote about moving through grief versus moving away from grief or not letting it consume you. It's like you're just moving through it.
So not just kind of like going past it, like
or
you gotta go
sidestepping
through
it or anything. It's just powering through every day.
Yeah.
You know, it's just different challenges every day. But it is it definitely takes courage, takes a level of boldness and trust.
Yeah.
Like trust is a big thing. It's like, okay, Lord, I don't know what I'm going to do with this, but I'm trusting you and I'm just going to do something.
Yes. Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So, what was your life like before your diagnosis?
Sure.
And then what was it like after?
Okay. Definitely a defining line. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Okay. So I moved to Orange County. I'd say about 17 years ago. So I was already settled in Orange County. I left my nonprofit job back in Central California, which is where I was born and raised, working for the Y and Boys and Girls Club, and came here. And I was determined to land a job at the YMCA in fundraising because fundraising is about relationship building and telling stories. And so I wanted to do that.
Yeah.
That's my passion. And so I landed a job as a capital campaign manager for a YMCA in Santa Ana. Okay. And the goal was to build a brand new facility to get kids active and moving and playing soccer. And the idea was to reduce childhood diabetes and obesity in Santa Ana, which was ramp. It was a huge problem in Santa Ana. So jumped right into that job early, as soon as, like, I think it was a month after I moved here. And I don't have children, but I got guardianship of my nephews. Okay. So I became a instant mom of 12 and 13-year-old boys.
Oh my gosh.
And I'm also a care provider for my brother who's developmentally disabled. So a house full of boys, very busy, working hard, not paying attention to my health as I should have been because I had the risks. My mom had cancer and my sisters. Yeah. So, I felt pretty healthy. Yeah. I felt like I was pretty healthy, but in reality, I wasn't staying on top of my screenings the way I should have, which to this day is still one of my biggest regrets. But nevertheless, I really enjoyed my work and I loved what I was doing. But one day, Thanksgiving Day, boom, I felt the lump and my life changed after that. But, I love music. My father is a musician. Like I said, I grew up in Central California, so I'm a little bit of a country girl at heart. Yeah. But I was so happy to be here in Orange County and just be near the ocean and, being near, I can have snow and ocean on the same day. Amazing circle of friends, very social butterfly. And when I was diagnosed with cancer, things changed where I had to turn internally. Like all of a sudden, being social and being out there and raising money and doing all these things wasn't as important because now I needed to focus on me. If I didn't focus on me, there wouldn't be a Yoli around to do what I wanted to do. So for me, changing and being focused on my own health was so hard for me. And asking for help was incredibly hard for me. But those are the two biggest changes that I needed to do in order for me to survive. And it was I think back to my 30s, which is, I was 31 when I was diagnosed. My entire 30s was spent on survival. Wow. So when I reached my 5-year mark, which is at that time was like, woohoo, you're in remission, then I fully embraced life. Like I was the typical cancer survivor wearing pink, doing all the races and talking about my cancer and telling the story to encourage people to get screened and stuff. And I became this very socially active person on social media. But things changed again when my sister was diagnosed 8 years into my survival. Okay. So, lots of little big roadblocks. But I think back and I know that there's this defining moment. And from a spiritual standpoint, I was actually searching for churches. I wanted to get connected to a church family. And I didn't find my space other than just digging deep into my Bible. And just being connected in that way. So finding a church family for me was very important. And thankfully, I have an amazing one right now that I just absolutely love.
So great. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Again, that you can't do it alone. No. And that's so important. Yeah. So one thing that I'm picking up too is this idea that sometimes, and I think this is true for women. I'm sure it's just different for men, but it's in the same way. But we can get in this zone where we're taking care of people, we're just like so, worried about people around us that we're not paying attention to our own health. And that's exactly what you said. You said you found out, you realized you weren't paying attention to your health at all, and that's when all of a sudden you found it. Right. And I think that's a key thing is we have to be aware of ourselves and not just be looking out all the time.
The interesting thing is that I had some indicators that I completely ignored, and reflecting back, I thought about this soon after I was diagnosed, like, oh my gosh, like if I would have paid attention when I had a rash or when I had swelling, or if I would have noticed my one breast was sagging a little bit more than before, like there's so many different things, indicators. I had fevers and things like that. Then I'm like, what is that? And I just kind of brushed off. If I would have paid attention, I would have found it sooner. I may not have gone through chemo and radiation. And just, if I would have found it sooner, I wouldn't have gone through all of that.
That is crazy. So, yeah. Well, let's jump into that. Let's just go there since that's where we're going now. Sure. And real quick, you also mentioned asking for help is a big switch. And I think that's also really good for women. Yes. Which is ironic because you would think, the stereotypes maybe are that we, are more helpless or whatever. But maybe it's this 21st century woman where we're like, we can do it ourselves. Yeah. Like everything. So asking for help was another big thing.
So hard. And, I had somebody really opened my eyes about asking for help and accepting help. Not even asking, but accepting help. They said to me, Yoli, by you simply saying no, or you're okay, or yes, I'll let you know when I need help, and then never follow through, it's like you're robbing them of the opportunity to be a blessing to you.
Wow.
It's like, what if the Lord put it in their heart to serve you in this manner, and you're creating a barrier because you're saying no?
Wow.
So get out of your own way and say yes.
I love that.
It's like, okay, I'm sorry, Lord. You know, but it's like, it's so true. And to look at it in that way, it's like, you know, how many times have we asked our friend, hey, let me know when you need something, and then they never do, or when they say yes, how willing are we to do it? Like, it's like, yeah, thank you for giving me the chance to do this, and it's mutually beneficial. Yeah. So I quit. I'm still kind of bad at it, but I'm better.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah. Gosh, and that kind of helps for if we're so concerned with other people, we almost can flip that and say, it would serve other people if we let them help us.
Yes. Exactly. There's some data around that, actually.
That's
in
so
terms
interesting.
of service. Being of service to someone actually is beneficial to your own well-being.
Yeah, this is totally a side note, but I remember learning this in my college psychology class like so many years ago, that if you want to get somebody to love you, ask them to do things for you, because when they help you, there's a psychological thing that happens that they grow in their love for you too.
Yeah, this connection.
Yeah,
it's like, I'm gonna have to use that strategy as I'm dating.
So funny. Yeah, you guys can all take that with you.
That's funny. Yeah.
So good. Okay, so we mentioned the aspect of being aware of your body, like catching the signals and the signs. So January, Cervical Cancer Awareness Month, I think of these unique cancers too that are unique to women.
Yeah.
What can we do for just normal screening? Because, I mean, people that follow the fam are anywhere from a high school girl all the way through, you know, a retired athlete. And so there's these younger years that we could really be working on preventing, be working on just being aware if something changes. So can you go into that a little bit?
Absolutely. So number one thing that a person can do to prevent cancer is to get screened, right? Okay. And be on top of the screening. So if there are some changes, even at the cellular level, then it can be caught early so that you can avoid having to go through all the things that I went through as a female and all the surgeries that I had to go through. It's just, you don't want to go through that. So in terms of cervical cancer, it's not, yes, it is affecting a woman, right? We want the women to be aware, and there are some cancers that the cancer screenings also can prevent, because there are a lot of male cancers that can come from a cervical cancer and HPV exposure. Okay. So that's one thing to note. But cancer screenings for cervical cancer can start as early as 21. Okay. And depending on your risks, so these are where conversations with your physicians have to take place, so you can determine how often you should be having them. At a minimum, if you have minimal risks, at every 3 years. But of course, it comes with sexually transmitted diseases. It's part of the sexually transmitted disease HPV is. So you want to be on top of your pap smears and be on a regular screening cycle that's appropriate for you based on your risks. And for when you're talking about the younger generation, we really want to encourage parents to have conversations with your child's physician about vaccines, because the vaccine has been around for a long time, and of course there's some stigma around vaccines, right? But the vaccine that is available for cervical cancer is so effective that it could actually reduce the cervical cancer diagnosis up to 90% if taken. So again, these are conversations to have with physicians to figure out if it's the right thing for you and your children. And as an adult, as a woman, of course, you want to stay on top of those regular screenings. In fact, make it an easy thing where it's like every month on your birthday, go get, if it's appropriate for your mammogram, your well woman exams, just to get in the regular cycle, right? It's top of mind always. Cervical cancer is one of the most preventable cancers there are out there. Wow. Actually, it's probably the most preventable cancer out there. I'll have to fact check that, but I'm almost certain that's true.
And it's just like a yearly screening. I mean, realistically,
it's painless. Well, it could be uncomfortable. Yeah. But it's basically almost painless. Yeah.
It's interesting because I don't have a history of cancer in my family necessarily, praise Jesus, but I don't feel like I was ever educated about these things. And I remember like when I was 18, going into my gynecologist and having these tests and kind of being like, what is, like, I don't even know what's happening. What are you testing for? Should I know what's going on? And I do think that that's another thing. You mentioned the parents, that this is a really easy thing to educate our youth on and our young women on. And also for our moms to be on top of.
Exactly.
Because so it's kind of like if we can just talk about it more and talk about being screened and be able to talk about vaccines and talk about these things, that alone can help us just become not just awareness of, oh, breast cancer is a thing, because I think we all know that now because of the pink ribbons. Yeah. But what actually does that mean? And when you look at how do we look at that for our own bodies, all that stuff.
Well, even looking at the HPV virus, right? That pretty much almost everyone is going to be exposed to it if you're sexually active. In your lifetime, you're going to be exposed to it. I read an interesting fact about that around like almost 100% of individuals will be exposed to the virus, and your body has a way of fighting it off. In some instances, it doesn't, and it could turn into cancer. So even destigmatizing HPV and not necessarily normalizing it, but just saying, you know what? If you have it, it happens. Like just about everybody has had the exposure to it, but what are you doing about it? Are you being screened for it? Are you checking it out and make sure that if you have some abnormal cell growth, that your doctor's aware, you're staying on top of it, and there's some protocols that could be in place to help you combat it or stop it from growing. So there's a lot that a person can do to be proactive. But without actually having the knowledge, you can't do anything. So the screening, like I'll always go back to screening. Screening is going to be important. Now the challenge with COVID and screening is that screenings have gone down significantly.
I bet.
And there's a lot of fear around, obviously, COVID, being exposed to COVID. So some folks initially didn't want to go get their screening done because they didn't want to go to a healthcare facility where there could be COVID. But not only that, of course, the stay-at-home orders and telehealth transitions, there are a lot of barriers for people getting screenings. But what I want to encourage people and really educate them on is that the protocols are in place at the healthcare systems. It's a safe space to go and get screened. Like you can go get screened now. Now there may be some backlogs. Of course, there may be some waiting periods. So depending on your risk, have the conversations. Advocate for yourself if you want to get in there. If you have symptoms, the telltale signs are there. Go in and be proactive and stand up for yourself to get that appointment. Wow. So I remember for me, just a real quick side story. Sorry, I keep talking.
This is great.
When I had the signs, and even when I felt the tumor and I knew that there was something there, I went and saw my primary care physician. He gave me the order to go get the mammogram. I called to make the mammogram. This was, keep in mind, the first week of December, and my appointment, they wouldn't give me an appointment until the last week of January, early February, because they had a waiting list. And I knew in my heart that it was cancer. Like I knew it. And all the signs kind of pointed to that in my family history. And it's like, no, I need an appointment by Friday. And it was almost brushed off, but they said no. They're like, everybody has an urgent reason why they want to come in. So I called my doctor back and I said, will you please get me an appointment by Friday? I won't take no for an answer. Like, I really need you to do this for me. And I was firm, and of course I got my appointment. Wow. And thank God I did, because by the time I found it was stage 3. What if I would have waited 2 months? It would have spread elsewhere. I may not be here.
You don't even know what could have happened.
Yeah, so standing up for yourself, advocating for yourself is so important, especially if you're at high risk or have some indicators. Don't ignore the indicators.
I feel like that is a really big encouragement for me personally, because I tend to not, especially in those environments, not advocate for myself. Feel like I'll be fine if I don't even know. I downplay things. I mean, I've never had something like that, but that's a really big encouragement, and I think it's really empowering too as a woman.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Okay, so you also mentioned something before we started recording. You said screenings, and then you said like activity.
Yes.
How does activity play into all this?
Yeah. So when I was first diagnosed, I wanted to become the expert at cancer, right?
Yes.
It's like the crash course of breast cancer before I had my first appointment with my oncologist.
That's amazing.
So in all the reading and research and all the studies that I read, one thing that kept showing up was about how physical activity reduces cancer risk at a minimum like 50%. Like
Wow.
the percentage is incredibly high where I couldn't ignore it. It's like, okay. And even like reducing fat around the belly can reduce your cancer risk significantly. And
Wow.
never would I associate my little pooch with
Yeah.
cancer risk reduction, but it's like, okay, that kind of makes sense. And so, yeah, just the 50% statistic is so, you can't ignore it. So for
Wow.
me, I wanted to make sure that as soon as I was able to, I'm talking like as soon as I was done with my chemo, I was at the gym walking.
Wow.
Like at least get on the treadmill as much as I could, started walking. And then like a couple months in, it's like, okay, I need to start working out with weights, knowing that the cancer treatment that I had would affect my bone health. So I wanted to do weight exercises so that I could improve my bone health. And there's so much that you can do, again, being proactive. So I got a trainer and I kind of went crazy with it. But it's just, you can't ignore the importance of physical activity. But when you're going through cancer or any kind of health crisis, it's hard to even imagine yourself picking up a weight or running or doing other types of activities. But for me, even walking to the mailbox was a win.
Okay. Because you're just surviving.
You're just surviving.
Yeah.
So, I don't want people to feel discouraged if they can't work out the way I did early on. Just walking and getting a breath of fresh air and getting some sunlight on your face is so important. But yeah, I honestly feel like by working out and paying attention to my nutrition that I was able to bounce back, and I'm sure it contributed to my health outcome and being here today. Like I made a complete switch over and became even more active because at that time I was working my butt off and was sedentary. I was on my emails and setting events and I wasn't exercising. And even through treatment, I was able to exercise a little bit. And then after that, then I went and I had some lofty goals
I love it.
about my workouts because I had some bigger like bucket list type of experiences that I wanted to do in my lifetime. And but the only way to do that is to be strong.
Okay.
Yeah.
I love that. So one of these bucket list things was skydiving, wasn't it?
Yes.
So take us into skydiving.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
What did that mean for you?
So when I was a kid, I actually fell in love with skydiving when I used to go to the rodeos with my father. And the rodeo kind of like kickoff would be when the skydivers jumped and landed in the arena with the American flag.
Okay.
I was just in awe of this experience of seeing these folks land in the arena. Like, oh my gosh, I want to do that one day. So that's where the seed was planted. And then I used to like watching like G.I. Joe and some other cartoons like I was a super tomboy growing up. I loved that kind of stuff. So anyway, I was very intrigued with the whole skydiving idea. So then, of course, you grow up. It's not top of mind anymore. But then when I survived cancer and I started talking to my best friend who was also a cancer survivor, we're like, hey, what should we do now that we're doing better? Because we had like parallel stories.
Okay.
We went through cancer treatment, surgeries, everything together. Cool. And but we were well. We were well on our way of leading this healthy life. But we want to experience life and just kind of grab life by the horns. And I said, I think either she mentioned it or I brought it up. I don't remember now, but she said, I'm booking it right now. So she got on the phone. And
No way.
She booked our first skydive. She and her brother and myself and my brother. So there were 4 of us. Okay. And it was going to be a tandem jump. And so there's really nothing that I needed to do to prepare for it other than just be brave enough to jump out of the plane, right?
Yeah, totally.
So we did the jump. It was so fun. I loved it so much. Like I felt alive. Yeah. But I was scared.
Yeah, of course.
Your brain's like, your mind is going a million miles a minute. And it felt really chaotic. But for me, and I really remember how getting in the plane and getting ready, getting hooked up to my tandem instructor, I really sat back and like, what am I doing? Like, I can't believe I'm doing this. Like, why am I doing? I just survived cancer and I'm jumping out of a plane. But then I started thinking about what it potentially could symbolize for me. Like it happened in an instant where it's like, you know what? I'm really taking this leap of faith. It's like, okay, Lord, I'm trusting you. Wow. Of course, I was praying because I was scared, right? Yes, I was like, oh, Lord, please just let me land safely. But then it really morphed into something else. And really for me, it symbolized that level of faith that I had in him. Wow. And so even like I was committed. Once I was in the plane, I knew I could have backed out if I wanted to, but in my head, I was committed. Okay. And again, it symbolized this commitment of faith, knowing that he would have my back and I would land, no matter what kind of chaos was happening around me, that I would land softly because of him.
Wow.
So it really did symbolize something far greater than the jump itself. But the jump itself was so much fun.
Oh my gosh. I don't know if I can ever do it. I'm just
Yeah. We kind of went crazy with it where we decided that we were going to jump 4 times a year, every year. And so we did that for several years in a row.
No way.
And then, and this is all during like surgeries and stuff. And so, you know, finally when I got to a point where one, it's like, okay, I'm embarrassed to do another tandem, but I need to land my own parachute now, you know? And so anyway, I wanted to take that leap of landing my own parachute. Of course, for the experience, but mostly to prove to myself that I had the strength to do so, because the pack weighs like 25, 30 pounds.
Yeah.
So carrying the pack and doing it in such a way where I don't affect lymphedema, so being very mindful of how I carry my pack, but more importantly, being strong enough to pull my own brakes and land my own parachute, because it does take pounds of pressure, like 20, 30 pounds of pressure to hold the brakes with toggles and then pull your brakes all the way down. And so it took a lot. I went right into my cancer center and I told my physical therapist, I said, you need to get me strong enough to pull my toggles and land my own parachute. So let's do some, you know, some exercises. And she put on, she's like, yeah, let's do it. She got super excited. She's like, you're crazy, but let's do this because we're going to get you strong enough to land your own parachute. So I started working out with weights and started doing a lot of exercise resistance training and just a ton of, I wanted to be flexible enough to arch my back. There's so much that you need to do. So yeah, I was able to land my own parachute, and I went after my skydiving license. I jumped solo. I think it was 3 times. It's about 16 or 17 jumps total.
Wow.
Things came to a screeching halt when my sister got sick, though. So I haven't pursued it since then.
Okay.
But someday I'll go back.
That's incredible. I'm already like, you've done enough. Wow.
Yeah.
I think about how I think I would get to the edge of the plane and just go, nope, not going to jump.
Not going to do it.
I can't imagine, but you're right. The level of faith that takes is crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, you're putting faith in a lot of things, and it is an exercise of faith. That's really
definitely
cool.
An exercise of faith. Even just standing there at the edge of that plane. I look back at the video. I'll send you the video so you can look
Yes, I would love
I look at that video and I remember how, like, I didn't feel nervous.
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to be very methodical in terms of how I was breathing and how I was thinking about things. And just, I remember praying. It's like, all right, Lord, like, let's do this.
Yeah.
Like, let's go. And then I took that one deep breath, looked at my coaches, did the count, and then out I went.
Wow. You know what I think when I think of you, Yoli, now? I just think, like, empowered. Like, it just sounds so, I mean, first of all, you start your own nonprofit. You're doing this incredible ministry and organization where you are working with so many cancer patients, and you're so empowered by your own story and the purpose that God has given you. But then you're like, I'm going to start landing my own skydiving and doing so much. And like what you're doing right now in the room that we're in, you know, you're starting a store of wigs. Like, you're just so empowered. And I don't know if that's who you were before also, but that's what I get. And I'm just really inspired by you.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
You know, personality, I think always lends to other opportunities. But again, I can't take any of the credit. Like, there's no way that I can take any of the credit. Like I mentioned to you earlier about our space where I'm at and the office upstairs. And it's like, we received our first donation. We received approval for this office space, and I got fiscally sponsored approval on the same day.
Wow.
Like, all 3 things happened at the same day. Like, I can't make this stuff up.
Totally.
I can't make that happen.
That's incredible. Yeah.
You know, it's just like, okay, if this isn't a sign that this is where I need to be and this is what I want to do,
Totally.
I don't know what is. And let me tell you, quitting a full-time job with benefits and everything to pursue something that may or may not work is scary. And it's such a huge risk, but it really isn't, because I know that this is really God's purpose for me.
Yeah. If you know God is the one, like, taking you there, you can do anything.
Just go with it.
Totally.
Still scary, though.
Yeah, totally. But those are the best stories and moments in our life when we can say only God. Yeah. Only God could have done this. So that's so cool. So I want to talk specifically about February 4th is World Cancer Day. Yes. So as a cancer survivor, as somebody who runs an organization to mentor cancer patients, what would you want to say on this day?
No pressure.
I know. I'm like, I know you've thought about this though.
I have, and I really don't have a massive message to say other than there's hope. There is hope available. It doesn't matter if you have a risk and you could potentially get cancer, or you've heard the words you have cancer, even stage 4 cancer, right? That you're not going to heal from and it may take your life someday. Regardless of where you're at, whether you're newly diagnosed or living with cancer for many years and anywhere in between, there's hope. And you can also be inspire hope in others by serving. And even people that are on their deathbed can serve. And I say this because I actually saw my mom do it when she was on her deathbed. And she left such a huge, it gives me chills just talking about it. It makes me want to cry. And I talk about this every now and then, but I remember this. I remember seeing her. She couldn't see. Her cancer had spread throughout her body. She couldn't even walk. It'd been probably like months since she had walked. Couldn't eat. We knew she wasn't going to make it. And she was still praying for her nurses. And, just what a wonderful example for me, right? Yeah. It's like, I'm breathing. I can walk. I feel healthy. Sometimes I don't. My body still hurts. I'm still recovering from the after effects of chemo and surgery. And things aren't perfect, but I can still help others. Wow. So even on your deathbed, you can help somebody.
Wow. That's incredible. I love that. That's so inspiring. Yeah. And if you can't do anything, you can pray.
Yeah, exactly.
That's like, wow, that's so cool. Well, just kind of final thoughts. What I'm thinking is don't suffer in silence, because I think about your story. When you go to that support group and you end up sharing that you are dealing with survival guilt, and all of a sudden everyone's like, me too. Yes. Like how much freedom that anyone who's listening or watching can feel if they take that risk, not to do it alone. And
it doesn't even have to be cancer. Like it could be just having a bad mom day. Yeah. Or, struggling with divorce or dealing with spiritual crisis even. It's like, talk to somebody about it. And if you're feeling you're at a point where you're in a low point, like again, like it's always better in company.
Yes. Yeah. And then in that same like lane is asking like, then what can I do? And just that empowering of having purpose even in our pain. Yeah. I think is so evident in your story. And something I also want to end with just saying is your whole organization is based off of like mentorship because of the emotional side of cancers and really of hardship in general. Like when you get a diagnosis and what that actually means and the kind of weight that puts on you is so much bigger than just the illness. And so I think about that, and I just feel like empowering anyone who's watching too to say, if you've gone through something, or even if you're going through something, to seek a mentor or to mentor somebody, right? Yes. Because what you can do when you've experienced it and you've gone through it is so beautiful, and how you can walk with somebody else in that. And so I feel like I want to end with that too. Do you have anything on that note?
No, I think that's a perfect way to end. And if you don't know where to serve, ask. You can call me. I'll point you, even if it's not cancer related, I'll point you in the right direction if I can, or I'll ask as well. So
I love that. Yeah. Okay, so I'll have Yoli's personal text message, email, everything to make sure you reach out.
Happy to.
Yes. Well, thank you so much, Yoli, for coming on and sharing your story. I've been so blessed.
Thank you so much for giving me the platform to share.